This video is going to count down the most interesting teams of the 1990s. Now, this doesn't mean the best teams necessarily of the 90s, although there are no bad teams on this list. So what makes a team interesting? Perhaps it's a unique approach, vibrant personalities, controversy, or just flat-out excellence. Usually some combination of all those things. And above all, vibes. The 1996 Cardinals. This is the only Cardinals playoff appearance during the 90s, and it's also the first year of the Tony LaRussa era in St. Louis. After nearly a decade of futility, the Cardinals made a major overhaul and brought in free agents Ron Gant, Gary Gaetti, Willie McGee, Todd Stottlemyre, and Andy Benes. And LaRussa brought in his Dangerous Knights crew with him from Oakland: Dennis Eckersley, Rick Honeycutt, Mike Gallego, and pitching coach Dave Duncan. They also brought phenom Royce Clayton in via trade to have Ozzie Smith pass the shortstop torch in his final season. That would not go exactly as planned, as Tony and Ozzie butted heads over playing time. Gotta side with Ozzie here. Even at 41, he outplayed the 26-year-old Clayton, equaling him in WAR in half the plate appearances. So often big changes like this tend to fall flat, but this team really took off in the second half, taking the NL Central, sweeping the Padres in the NLDS, and going up 3-1 on the Braves in the NLCS. Unfortunately, with Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz lined up to close out the series, the Cards were outscored 30-3 in the final 3 games. Tony would bring in Big Mac in '97 and proceed to slop it up for the next few years before the LaRussa-Pujols dynasty would begin. The 1990 Reds. These are the Nasty Boy Reds, which refers to the bullpen trio of Randy Myers, Rob Dibble, and Norm Charlton, which put up 10.9 WAR collectively. Charlton did make 16 starts, but still, this has got to put them up there for the best bullpen trio of all time. They would lead the Reds to the World Series and upset the A's, which led them to say that it was the start of a dynasty or dynasty. Ugh. But that was an illusion. The Reds would return to the playoffs once in the next 19 years. The 1990 team was also remarkable for 2 other facts. One, this is the first year after Pete Rose was fired due to his gambling scandals, which shook the league, although he probably should have been fired after doing this ad. And 2, Chris Sabo's glasses. Simply the greatest glasses guy to ever do it. The 1996 Yankees. I could have put the 1998 Yankees on here, as they were the winningest team since 1906, but I chose the 96 Yanks because this was the one time where neutral fans could root for the Yankees. Well, kind of. I mean, this was pretty annoying right here.
He's not going to jump. See, that ball's coming down. It's coming down. It's not going out. It was coming down. I think he would have caught the ball.
By 1998, the Yankees felt like they were already a dynasty, but in 1996, they were a team that hadn't won a postseason series in 15 years, and they were going against the defending champion Braves, who at that point seemed unstoppable. They felt like a major underdog going up against Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz. But little did we know that the Yanks would become the evil empire of MLB for the next 15 years. The 1993 White Sox. I think people tend to forget how big a deal Frank Thomas was in the 90s. It was really Thomas, Griffey, and Bonds back then. Frank loses the WAR battle here because of positional value since he played first base DH, but offensively, they're all right there. And none of them ever won a World Series, which shows you how weird baseball is. Imagine Michael Jordan playing his whole career on teams that just missed the playoffs. It wouldn't happen, but one player can only do so much in baseball. Sure, the Big Hurt did have his Scottie Pippen in Robin Ventura, and Jack McDowell was an ace, but the White Sox of the 90s found themselves constantly thinking that adding one more free agent star was all they needed to complete their team. So in 1991, they added Tim Raines. They finished in second place. So in '92, they added George Bell, who put up an empty 112 RBI season, batting behind Frank. Bell was actually sub-replacement level there, and the Sox dropped to third place. In '96, they would add 3 big free agents, Danny Tartabull, Harold Baines, and Tony Phillips, and finish in second place. In '97, they would splurge on another superstar named Bell, Albert this time, who would play almost as poorly as George did, second place. It was a Sisyphean struggle for the Southsiders. But back in 1993, they did briefly reach the mountaintop. In this metaphor, you could say that George Bell was the negative 2.5 WAR boulder that they pushed up the hill. And they did it mainly by developing some homegrown pitching talent in Alex Fernandez, Wilson Alvarez, and Jason Beret. They would be even better in 1994 before the players' strike would nudge the boulder back downhill. the 1997 Marlins. Prior to the Marlins, the Royals had been the expansion team with the quickest path to success when they reached the playoffs in their 8th season after engineering a series of genius-level trades and drafting a generational talent in George Brett. The Marlins got there in their 5th season and utilized a different team-building method, free agency. The Marlins went out and basically bought a championship. They brought in Kevin Brown, Al Leiter, Bobby Bonilla, Alex Fernandez, Moises Alou, Jim Eisenreich, and Devon White. They would also pick up Gary Sheffield in a smart trade. It all came together for 1 year and fell apart the next when they not sign or sell off pretty much everyone I previously mentioned and more. The Kaiser Soze of baseball teams.
And like that, he's gone.
The 1999 Diamondbacks. The 99 D-backs saw what the 97 Marlins did and said, "Hold my beer." Man, I had forgotten that this had happened. The Diamondbacks won 100 games in their second year as a team. How do you even do that? Well, step 1, sign the most dominant pitcher of the era to a big free agent deal. 2, trade a nothing prospect for a league average-ish 30-year-old outfielder and have him turn into a superstar slugger for the next 5 years. 3, pick up about 5 other solid veteran free agent arms. 4, veteran free agent second baseman, and veteran free agent center fielder. Okay, I gotta hold up and just marvel at these 90s baseball card designs. 5, pick up a solid third baseman in the expansion draft, then trade him immediately for a better third baseman. Then immediately trade that guy for an even better third baseman.
That's the way you do it.
The D-backs would stall out in the playoffs in 99, but keep the team together and get it done in 01. The 1991 Braves. The 91 Braves were famous for 2 things: being the beginning of one of the longest dynasties in baseball history, and 2, going from last place to first place. The Twins actually went last to first in 91 as well, but they had just won the World Series in 87. The Braves had been awful for years. I had the notion when thinking about this team that GM John Schuerholz came over from the Royals after 1990 and rebuilt this franchise, but in actuality, he inherited a team on the brink of greatness. By and large, everybody else was here the previous year. Glavine, Smoltz, Justice, Lonnie Smith, Ron Gant, Charlie Leibrandt, Steve Avery, Mike Stanton, Jeffs Blauser, and Treadway. What it seems that Schuerholz did was make one brilliant free agent signing in MVP Terry Pendleton, and then cut the dead weight. Looking at the 1990 last place team, it wasn't like those aforementioned players had bad years and turned it around in 91. No, they had pretty good years in 90 too, save Steve Avery and Mike Stanton. It seems like it should have been at least an okay team, but they had a ton of terrible players too. So he cut guys like Andres Thomas, replaced Jim Presley with Pendleton, which led to a net WAR increase of 7.9, cut 2 backup catchers who had combined for negative 2.2 WAR, and then rebuilt a god-awful bullpen. Addition by subtraction. And the next thing you know, you win your division 16 consecutive years. The 1993 Phillies. So I just found out that this team had a nickname, the Broad Street Bellies. I don't know. Don't think that one made it out of Philadelphia. It was a reference to the Philadelphia Flyers or something.
It makes sense. Don't be a bitch.
Anyway, the 93 Phillies were kind of like the off-brand version of the bad guys 86 Mets. Rough and tumble guys with lots of personality, but I don't think they had quite the rock star party vibe as the Mets. This vibe was more like the most talented beer league team you ever saw. You had actual bad guy Lenny Dykstra, who supposedly hired private investigators in 1993 to dig up dirt on umpires in order to negotiate a favorable strike zone.
Wasn't a coincidence you think that I led the league in walks the next few years, was it?
Then there was John Kruk, who obviously had a Kenny Powers-esque work ethic.
I play real sports, not trying to be the best at exercising.
Kruk was a really odd player. You rarely see a large, round man like him who isn't hitting for much power. He was basically a big lug that just hit singles and walked a lot, but he was great at that. Then you had Darren Daulton, who was out there astral projecting into parallel dimensions and shit during games. And of course you had Mitch Williams, the Wild Thing, shutting it down in the 9th. Well, not always. The 1993 Giants. It's weird to think that there was some overlap between the Will Clark, Matt Williams Giants of the late 80s and the Barry Bonds Giants of the 90s, but here it is. In his first year after leaving Pittsburgh, this is probably the best team Bonds was ever a part of. And of course they didn't make the playoffs. They won 103 games and fell a game short of the Braves. The notion of a 100-win team falling short of the playoffs felt really wrong and led the league to institute the wild card in the following year. This is also the best season of Bond's career prior to his embiggening. 9.9 WAR and a 206 OPS plus. It's always fun to marvel at Bond's insane 2001 to 2004 stat lines when he just broke everyone's brains. 120 intentional walks is mass hysteria type behavior from the league.
Oh, walk him anyway! Walk him!
But don't forget how great Bonds was his whole career. These numbers are incredible, and he was still stealing bases and playing great outfield defense. Let the man into the Hall of Fame already. The 1994 Expos. This is a real downer to end on, but it's a fascinating what could have been. The Expos had the best record in baseball at 74-40 and were poised to win the NL East over the mighty Braves when the players' strike hit and forced the cancellation of the playoffs, and ultimately forced the cancellation of baseball in Quebec. Their three top players,
Marcus Alou, left field. Marquise Grissom, center field.
Larry Walker, right field.
Were all under their final year of team control with Montreal and would hit free agency, becoming unaffordable for the small market Expos. They were able to hold on to Pedro Martinez and a few other solid players, but taking 15 WAR of value off the team was too much to overcome, and the team would stumble along for another decade before finally moving to Washington. Maybe if this season plays out and the team has a deep playoff run, perhaps the city has a baseball renaissance period and is able to keep the team. Remember, this is what they've taken from us.
Ah bien oui. Ah oui.
Ah oui. Et immédiatement, il y a une réaction.
Balle est tirée. Oh, il est tiré pour de la vue! White Sox est en bombe! Victoire des Expos 6-5!
Well, there you have it. I'm sure there's a case to be made for several other teams. So let us know in the comments who you think we snubbed on this list.